Hello, and welcome back to our YouTube channel. I am Ronique Bastine Robinson, and I am joined today by Greg Moore, attorney and sports agent out of Atlanta. Greg, how are you doing?
Good to be here, Ronique.
How's it going?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's wonderful.
It's chilly in Chicago.
It is.
Yeah, I'm from Atlanta right now, so it's a little warmer there than here.
Well, tell us about your practice and what you do in Atlanta.
Well, right now I'm working with, I've recently left the role of a NCAA Commissioner, and I spent the last 2 years working with sports tech startups, college coaches, going back to the practice of law where I came from in the first place, sports organizations, sports teams, sports leagues. So, I'm practicing sports law.
All right.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about NIL, because that's a topic that we are all really interested in because it is so fast-paced and moving and changing every day. How has NIL impacted your practice?
Well, it's only impacted my practice from the standpoint indirectly,
Okay.
from the perspective of working with maybe college coaches in certain universities that are now seeing the economics of their the college sports enterprise being kind of reimagined, and you're now seeing obviously player compensation costs being included on a athletic department's P&L. So they now, I'm dealing with the indirect consequences of that in terms of like coaches' salaries and probably that you're going to see maybe the diminution of the growth of those salaries, because now athletic directors and universities now got to carve some of that money out for student athletes.
And how is that money going to impact those student athletes?
Well, right now it cuts both ways. For years, the NCAA had prohibitions against student athletes being paid, not just for name and likeness, but also more importantly for their athletic performance. So for years there was this cat and mouse game of athletes who were being paid money under the table, and the NCAA is chasing coaches and boosters and handlers around and trying to figure out who's cheating and who's not. So right now all of that is being kind of legalized, and the payment of the players is coming out of the shadows, and players are being paid directly. The downside, so that's the good side, that these guys should have been paid many moons ago. Mm-hmm. The downside is that there are no guardrails in place to protect these young people from the kind of predatory forces that prey on professional athletes. We all know about these statistics about 75% of NBA players, NFL players have no money within 4 or 5 years of retiring from playing professional sports. So the downside is that we're going to see, unfortunately, unless we begin to adopt some rules and policies to protect these kids from predators and from themselves, frankly. Mm-hmm. The downside, there's a great risk factor of those kind of sad outcomes occurring as a consequence of the money that these kids are now earning.
And what kind of money are these kids earning?
A lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends on the level of college sports you're playing at. Mm-hmm. We're seeing obviously NIL deals, smaller deals in Division III and Division II, maybe in the hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars. But when you're looking at the Power Five or the biggest conference, Autonomy 4, Big Ten, SEC, there are athletes making millions of dollars a year. Mm-hmm. So it really depends on the caliber of the athlete, the profile of the university, and the level and the sport they're playing. Usually the highest deals, compensation deals, are going to be basketball and football, because they generate the highest amount of TV viewers. But you're seeing gymnasts and women's athletes, student athletes, making money, not necessarily driven by the media rights deals that the schools and the conferences are parties to, but driven by their own individual ability to build their own social media profiles and put interesting content on those platforms.
Okay. And so, what kind of financial protections should these children or their parents be investigating as these dollars are rolling in?
Well, I mean, I think the typical kind of financial planning that high net worth individuals, the kind of teams they assemble to protect and preserve their wealth, I think younger people should consider building those kind of teams in terms of hiring a CPA and hiring, a lawyer and hiring good accountants and, hiring a financial advisor and, putting those teams together, except only these kids are much younger. So I think, yeah, I think those kind of conversations should be had. The other thing is that I think from a policymaker standpoint, meaning, state legislators, universities, parents in some cases, we need to think about what kind of guardrails can we put in place to protect these kids from themselves. And I was telling one of the folks at this conference, I said, hey, I grew up in a two-parent house. Father was professional, educated, older brothers. I mean, a stable, financial background. Mm-hmm. But if someone would give me $1 million at 17 years old, that probably wouldn't have ended well. Even though I had the best parents, you could have, I just wasn't probably, I wouldn't have been financially sophisticated enough or mature enough, frankly, to be a responsible steward of those resources. So I just think that, and when you look at now, the typical athlete that don't come from the most advantaged backgrounds, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Those risk factors are even more pronounced. So I'm really concerned about, the lack of guardrails, lack of protections that we have in place to, again, protect student athletes from third-party competitors and also, to some degree from themselves by virtue of their lack of maturity and sophistication.
So now, we are a family law firm. And so what should family law practitioners look at in terms of these children that are going to come into money? What about the relationship between them and their parents should family law practitioners focus on? And what about the relationship between them and potentially children that they may have themselves?
I think if I were a family law practitioner in dealing with an NIL matter, I'd be very concerned with the inherent conflicts that emerge from these relationships. Mm-hmm. Because if you're representing a kid who's generating significant amounts of revenue as a byproduct of NIL transactions, we need to I think the lawyer needs to establish that this is the kid's money. Mm-hmm. Because I think when you're dealing with a youngster who, in their mind, correctly so, I wouldn't even be in this position. It was for my father, shooting jump shots with me at the park, and my mother driving me to, the camps and youth games. It's hard not to see the resources through a communal lens. Mm-hmm. And you start thinking this is everybody's money. But, when 99% of the kids, this will be the single biggest payday they'll have in their lives that has to last them, hopefully their whole life. Mm-hmm. There's a tension between, well, this is all of our money that can be used by all of us to deal with whatever financial needs that the family may be confronted with. And I need to at least keep some of this money in the event that, I don't play professionally beyond college. And that's going to be 99% of the kids who are a party to these significant transactions. So I think if I'm a family lawyer, I need to explain to the family and educate them that, hey, this is the statistics. This is first and foremost, the child is my client. I have a fiduciary duty to the child. I'm going to be respectful of the parents, but my priority is to protect the client and the child, not to pay off the house or pay off the sister's student loan and buy you a new car. We gotta keep that in front of mind, that the priority is protecting the child.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank
and
you.
Thank you for watching. And you'll have to come back to hear more from Greg Moore and how NIL and family law intersect. Thank you.